Okay, so moving on from our contemporary pieces into our directing and TIE unit, stands for theatre and education. We first had to talk about and distinguish between theatre in terms of practice and entertainment, and theatre and education. So to establish this, to start off with, we evaluated what we knew the differences could be. So that was mainly like the purpose. So the whole purpose of theatre and education was discussed, and then we actually had a deeper discussion into what it actually was. And Chip was telling us a bit about like what this would mean in terms of what resources we would have in terms of character, story, set, costume, things like that. So initially we thought about theatre and education, and the main difference being the purpose. Theatre and education is designed to teach an audience something, is designed to have a piece, to like create a piece of drama, so that it has the purpose of teaching and making it memorable for an audience. So for example, using any types of criteria given, you can then teach the desired outcome, desired message to an audience, and they will leave knowing about it with that message, and it would have impacted them in some way, and some way they can carry across into other things in life. So this often depends on the client. The client will give you the target audience. So in the first initial lessons, we also spent time looking at target audiences and how we would create with a similar sort of theme but different information for a different target audience, and that all depends on what target audience the client gives to you. There's a major difference between theatre and education. Another as well is about the way you do it. So it's probably less naturalistic like Stanislavski, more taken across the ideas of Brecht, and almost like in terms of like pantomime almost, making it really clear, less dramatized but more impactful depending on your target audience again. So to start off with, we wrote about three different columns: story, location and character, and we wrote on a big board about what sort of things we would use in normal theatre, and then circled what we wouldn't be able to use in theatre and education. So things came up like lighting, scene transitions, costume, and mainly things that required a lot of money would be limiting in terms of theatre and education. Also, in terms of theatre and education, often the work needs to be transferable, and you need to be able to perform it in many different locations, because you might be touring different schools, for example, showing this piece of drama to students, and so you're limited in the tech that you can carry, in the set that you can carry. So those are limiting factors as well, which are things that you would need to consider, and things that we have to talk about in terms of theatre and education as a whole, even though we'll be doing one section particularly in our own school. So we'll have the resources of the drama department and stuff. Ones that were still taken into account and important and were to be considered for both normal theatre and theatre and education were still moments of orientation, potential scripts to be used, the dialogue, narration. Narration is really important. This often comes in the form of a facilitator, and also use of, which is really important in terms of getting messages across, and also use of potential some costume, language and accents, which definitely help an audience relate and put themselves in a situation, especially when you're trying to get an emotive message across, like for example mental health issues or issues that might necessarily relate to their social group. Like if you were targeting towards teens, then you might use their like slang and things like that. Physicality, facial expressions, tone, proxemics, the basics of all drama performances still need to be relevant in terms of TIE. But I guess there's more ideas of like moments of orientation and use of a facilitator as well. So yeah, we discussed that, and then we discussed some more specific examples. So Sir gave us some certain scenarios that a client might give to us, one particularly about road safety and two target audiences. One was adults and one was children of around 9-10, which is a tricky age group for like both to do. We created 2 pieces of drama about road safety, having to include facts and things, and this enabled us to sort of have the whole idea of focusing on differences between how we target pieces of drama towards a target audience. So what language, what styles, what would have the most impact, and also what's like more respectful as well, because then we moved on to ideas of social media, and elderly people and younger people, teenagers, and sort of looked at the idea of stranger danger and things like that. Really common talked about topics, but when talking about it, tackling it through drama, you definitely have to think a lot about your target audience. So that's why we spent these couple of lessons talking and thinking about it, and it's a main thing to distinguish between TIE and normal theatre, because even though you are targeting towards certain audiences, pieces themselves, like for example when we did Anatomy of a Suicide, are often written so that you know who they're targeted towards. So as an actor or director, it sort of lends itself to the whole idea that it's supposed to be for a certain audience, and you don't really have to worry about that. It's more about the audience that you are targeting towards. You focus on that and you know that that piece is targeted towards them, whereas this, a lot of the time you have to tailor what exactly you're doing to make sure it is for that audience. So when we get our actual instructions of what to do, then we'll definitely have to think about this, and there'll be something to discuss as a class. So that's mainly what we've done as an introduction into TIE. Soon we'll get what we actually need to be working on, and we'll be looking at what requirements of the client has said, what ideas we want to get across, and a thorough knowledge of whatever we're going to talk about or be basing our piece on, and then a thorough linking to our target audience and what we think we should tailor it towards in terms of their needs, and trying to interest and gain most we can from them as well.